The docking ring of Port Helix always smelled like overheated circuits and bad decisions, which suited Alex just fine. He leaned against the open ramp of his freighter, boots crossed, watching cargo drones scuttle like nervous insects under the station's artificial dawn. Profit displays flickered on his wrist pad, green numbers stacking up in a way that made his cynicism feel justified. The universe, in his experience, only made sense when credits were involved. Everything else was decorative noise. Mira emerged from the customs corridor precisely on schedule. She looked almost human at first glance. Same posture, same calm confidence. But the long ears sweeping back along her head gave her away immediately. They were elegant, expressive things, tilting slightly as she took in the scene. Alex had learned over time that those ears caught more than sound. They caught intention. He still hadn't figured out how. "You are late by 12 seconds, she said, not unkindly. Alex checked his wristpad with exaggerated concern. "Tragic. I'll alert the historians." One ear twitched. Mira's version of a smile followed, subtle and sincere. Their partnership had been built on exchanges like this. Her literal precision, his refusal to take anything seriously. It worked. Miraculously, lucratively, it worked. The deal itself was straightforward, which in Alex's line of work usually meant it was suspicious. Rare isotopes from a drifting moon, a buyer who asked no questions, and a profit margin generous enough to make even Port Helix's corrupt trade guild look the other way. They watched the last crate seal itself, the magnetic locks humming like contented beasts. "This transaction exceeds our projections," Mira said. "Our compatibility continues to produce optimal outcomes." Alex snorted. "Yeah, we're a dream team. You, me, a ship full of questionable cargo. Practically domestic." She tilted her head, ears angling forward. "Domestic? Figure of speech." He waved a hand. "Relax. At this rate, you'll be my future wife." The words left his mouth light, weightless, tossed into the recycled air like confetti. Alex barely noticed them. He was too busy admiring the profit readout now pulsing happily on his wrist. Mira, however, went very still. For half a second, Alex thought he'd finally broken her. Then she nodded once, slowly, as if confirming an internal calculation. "Acknowledged," she said. "Acknowledged?" Alex laughed. "You sound like my ship's autopilot." She did not laugh. Instead, she stepped closer, studying him with a focus that made him suddenly aware of the smudge of engine grease on his jacket. Her ears were fully forward now, alert, intent. "You have chosen an unexpected moment for a bonding declaration," she said, "but the prosperity context is favorable." Alex blinked. "Whoa, hold on. That was a joke." "Clarify," Mira said. He grinned, assuming this was another cultural gap they could hop over with a bad metaphor. Human humor, you know, words that don't mean what they mean. Her ears angled back slightly, not offended. Processing. "You are stating that you intentionally spoke false intent?" "Not false, just playful." Mira considered this in silence. Around them, the dock buzzed with life, engines spooling, traders arguing, a distant announcement about unpaid fines. The universe kept moving, blissfully unaware that Alex's mouth might have just detonated a small cultural bomb. "In my culture," she said carefully, "bonding declarations are not play. They are irreversible markers of future alignment." Alex chuckled, a little less confidently this time. "Good thing I'm not from your culture, then." She nodded again, but her gaze didn't leave his face. "Yet you are the one who spoke." Something about that made the air feel heavier. Alex straightened, waving both hands now. "Look, Mira, I say stuff like that all the time. It doesn't mean I'm planning a ceremony or picking out matching sleep pods." "That is acceptable," she replied. "Ceremonial preparation can be optimized later." He stared at her. "Preparation for what?" "For us." The word landed with far more gravity than his joke ever had. Alex opened his mouth, then closed it, then laughed again, because that was easier than unpacking whatever this was. "You're messing with me, right? Your version of humor?" Mira's ears lifted high, a posture he'd never seen before. "My species does not possess a humor construct related to bonding. Declarations define reality. Reality is not amusing." Alex rubbed his face. Somewhere in the galaxy, he was sure, a cautionary training video was being updated with his name. Okay, okay. New rule. No more jokes about marriage. She nodded serenely. Agreed. The declaration has already occurred. He stared at the open ramp of his ship, half expecting it to seal itself and jump to hyperspace without him. This is getting out of hand. On the contrary, Mira said, it is progressing as intended. Alex let out a long breath, forcing a grin back onto his face. Panic could wait. There were credits to collect, engines to warm, and a universe full of worse problems than an alien partner who took him at his word. Still, as Mira walked beside him toward the ship, already discussing schedule adjustments for shared future efficiency, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, all because he couldn't resist a joke. In the vast, indifferent sprawl of space, Alex had always believed nothing truly mattered unless you decided it did. Watching Mira walk ahead, her long ears catching every sound, every nuance, he began to suspect the universe had a sense of irony after all, and it was far more serious than he'd ever been. By the time the freighter slipped free of Port Helix and the stars stretched into clean blue lines, Alex had convinced himself that the situation was under control. Not solved, control was a generous word, but contained, like a mild reactor leak you pretended not to hear hissing behind the wall. Mira sat at the navigation console, posture perfect, long ears relaxed but attentive. She had already synced her data slate with the ship's systems without asking. Alex had noticed. He'd decided not to comment. Commenting led to conversations, and conversations lately led to words like bonding, alignment, and future. So, he said, dropping into the pilot's chair and spinning it half toward her. Great job back there. Smooth deal. No explosions. Always a win. Yes, Mira replied. The probability of explosion was reduced by 17% after your declaration. Alex froze mid-spin. My what? Your bonding statement, she said, as if explaining fuel consumption. Such declarations stabilize interspecies negotiations. Observers perceive unified intent. He blinked. You're telling me people gave us better prices because they thought we were, what, romantically optimized? Correct. Alex leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I accidentally weaponized flirting. Mira tilted her head, ears angling slightly. Define flirting. Nope, not today. The ship's AI chimed softly, announcing a course correction. Mira adjusted it without hesitation, fingers dancing across holographic controls. Alex watched her for a moment longer than necessary. She was efficient in a way that made his usual chaos feel almost irresponsible. Almost. A notification blinked on his wristpad, then another, then several more. He frowned. Why am I getting congratulatory messages from 3 trade guilds and a mining collective I've never heard of? Mira glanced over. Word of your declaration has propagated faster than expected. Of course it has. One message helpfully included a stylized icon of 2 interlocking symbols, human and alien, surrounded by what looked suspiciously like ceremonial ribbons. Alex groaned. Please tell me that's not an engagement emblem. It is a provisional one, Mira said. Full authorization requires mutual reaffirmation. Alex jabbed a finger at the display. Reaffirmation sounds like a trap. It is simply repetition of intent. He laughed weakly. I repeat jokes all the time. That doesn't make them legally binding. Mira's ears twitched, a subtle sign Alex had come to associate with confusion. Your species repeats false intent frequently. We call it sarcasm. Yes, I have begun researching this concept. That sentence alone should have terrified him. Mira researching anything tended to end with charts, projections, and inevitable conclusions. She brought up a holographic display between them. It showed a series of human comedy clips, frozen mid-expression. I have isolated several examples. In this one, a human states, I would rather eject myself into space than attend this meeting, yet no ejection occurs. Alex snorted despite himself. Yeah, that's a classic. In this instance, she continued, switching clips, another human says, I could marry this beverage. No marriage follows. Okay, that one's on us. Mira studied him closely. These statements are socially acceptable because they are understood as non-binding? Exactly. Her ears slowly angled back. Then how does one distinguish binding declarations from non-binding ones? Alex opened his mouth, then stopped. He had no good answer. He'd spent most of his life avoiding binding anything. Context, he offered. Tone. Intent. I detected confidence and satisfaction in your tone, she said, and the context was shared success. He grimaced. Yeah, that tracks. Silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of the engines. Outside, a nebula bloomed in soft purples and golds, light scattering like spilled paint across the void. Alex had seen it a dozen times before. It had never looked quite so judgmental. Another alert chimed. This one was internal. Why, Alex said slowly, does my ship now have a secondary crew designation under your name? Mira looked pleased. I authorized it. Shared assets increase efficiency. You authorized changes on my ship. Our ship, she corrected gently. Alex laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. You're fast. I'll give you that. Preparation is respect, Mira said. My people prepare thoroughly for unions. There it is again. Union. Yes. He stood, pacing the narrow cockpit. Look, Mira, I like working with you. You're smart, you're honest, and you've saved my life at least twice. But this is a lot. She watched him calmly. Is it the bond itself that troubles you, or the speed at which it unfolds? Alex stopped pacing. That question landed closer to the truth than he was comfortable with. I don't like being cornered. I have not cornered you, she said. I have aligned with you. Semantics. Essential ones. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Humor had always been his shield, but even he could feel it cracking. Still, he forced a grin. You know, back on Earth, we usually start with a drink. Maybe an awkward dinner. Mira considered this. I have already scheduled a shared nutritional intake. His eyes widened. You scheduled a date? A preliminary one. When? She glanced at the display. In 12 minutes. Alex stared at her, then at the stars, then back again. You don't waste time, do you? No, she said softly. Time wastes those who hesitate. He sank back into the pilot's chair, laughing despite himself. Somewhere between panic and amusement, he realized this was no longer a misunderstanding he could joke away. Whatever he'd started with a careless sentence was unfolding with cosmic efficiency, and for the first time in a long while, Alex had no script, no escape route, only a future rushing toward him at faster-than-light speed, whether he believed in it or not. The shared nutritional intake turned out to be less dramatic than Alex had feared, and far more confusing than he'd hoped. Mira prepared it in the ship's small galley with clinical focus, assembling nutrient portions that glowed faintly and rearranged themselves when touched. Alex watched from a safe distance, arms crossed, as one portion attempted to crawl off the counter. It's trying to escape, he noted. It is responding to your pheromones, Mira said calmly. You are mildly alarming. Story of my life. They ate seated across from each other, the table projecting a neutral star field to encourage bonding calm. Alex poked his food suspiciously. It tasted like citrus, metal, and regret, though not necessarily in that order. Mira observed him with quiet interest, long ears angled forward, absorbing every micro-expression as if cataloging a rare species. This meal marks the beginning of relational calibration, she said. Alex swallowed. I thought it was just lunch. In your culture, lunch is informal, Mira replied. In mine, shared consumption of following declaration establishes preliminary alignment. Of course it does. The ship chimed again, this time projecting an incoming transmission. Alex waved it away instinctively, but the hologram forced itself into existence anyway. A tall, many-eyed alien figure appeared, draped in ceremonial fabrics and smiling with alarming enthusiasm. Captain Alex, the figure boomed, congratulations on your declared union. Alex nearly choked. How does everyone know? Mira tilted her head. The registry updates in real time. The what now? The figure continued without waiting for a response. We have already prepared preliminary documentation recognizing shared liability, shared profit, and shared ceremonial obligations. Alex coughed. Shared what obligations? The transmission ended cheerfully before answers could be provided. Alex stared at the empty air. Okay, new plan. I explained sarcasm, thoroughly, immediately. Mira set her utensils down with care. I am receptive. He rubbed his hands together like a man about to perform a magic trick he didn't fully understand. Sarcasm is when you say something you don't mean, but you expect the other person to know you don't mean it. That seems inefficient, Mira said. It is. We've built entire entertainment industries around it. She considered this. Then your declaration could be classified as sarcasm if mutual understanding existed? Yes, exactly. However, she added, I did not understand it as such. Alex exhaled. Right, that's the problem. Thus, Mira continued, the declaration remains valid. He stared at her. You're telling me sarcasm only works if both people agree it's sarcasm. Yes, that explains so many arguments. Alex slumped back in his chair. Look, Mira, I never intended to hurt you or mislead you. I just talk too much, especially when things go well. I have observed this pattern, she said. You deflect significance with humor. Hey, that's unfairly accurate. Silence stretched again, heavier this time. The ship drifted through open space, stars pulsing gently against the hull. Mira broke the quiet first. In my culture, she said, intent may evolve, but declarations mark a beginning, not a prison. Alex looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't demanding. She was steady. That was somehow more unsettling. So you're saying I'm not trapped, he said. No, she replied. You are invited. He laughed softly. You know how terrifying that sounds to someone like me? Yes, Mira said. Your biometric responses suggest chronic avoidance of permanence. Wow. Do I get a diagnosis report with that? I can provide charts. Please don't. Another alert chimed. Alex glanced at the display and groaned. Why is my navigation system asking me to approve a joint long-term route plan? Mira's ears twitched in what Alex now recognized as mild embarrassment. I may have anticipated acceptance. He stood, pacing again, but this time slower, more thoughtful. You move like the universe makes sense, like things connect. They do, she said. Eventually, he stopped pacing. I don't know how this ends. Mira met his gaze. Neither do I. That is why it is a future. Alex let out a long breath, tension easing just enough to let a crooked smile return. You know, back home, this would be the part where someone says, let's take it one day at a time. She nodded solemnly. I have scheduled our next 37 days accordingly. He laughed, real laughter this time, echoing through the galley. The situation was still absurd, still terrifying, but beneath it all was something unexpected. The sense that for once, his words hadn't vanished into the void. They'd landed, they'd mattered. And whether he was ready or not, the universe was holding him to them. By the fourth day of their shared 37-day schedule, Alex had stopped counting precisely after realizing Mira absolutely had not. The freighter felt different, not rearranged in any obvious way, not freshly painted or glowing with alien symbols, but altered in the subtler sense, like a room that remembers a conversation you wish you'd handled better. Mira moved through the ship as if she had always belonged there. She adjusted environmental settings to compromise between human comfort and her own physiology, resulting in air that was marginally warmer and carried a faint mineral tang. Alex complained exactly once, then stopped when she calmly explained that the new balance would extend his cognitive sharpness by 3%. 3% is not worth rocks in my lungs, he muttered. You are breathing efficiently, she replied. That's not comforting. Their current job took them along the edge of a radiation-scarred system, where abandoned satellites drifted like forgotten thoughts. Alex guided the ship manually, partly out of habit, partly because the autopilot kept offering to optimize routes for shared longevity, which felt aggressively personal. Mira sat nearby, reviewing cultural archives. Holographic symbols flickered around her, some ancient, some clearly borrowed from other species and modified with meticulous care. What are you studying now? Alex asked. Domestic integration models, she said. He winced. You're really not easing into that word, are you? It is inefficient to avoid accurate terminology. Humans have built entire civilizations on avoiding accurate terminology. She considered that. That explains several historical collapses. He laughed despite himself. Humor was becoming less of a shield and more of a bridge, something he could step across rather than hide behind. Mira didn't always get the joke, but she never dismissed it either. She examined it, turned it over, tried to understand why it mattered. Later, during a routine systems check, Alex discovered his tool rack reorganized. Everything was categorized, labeled, and aligned with near-religious precision. "Mira," he called out, "did you alphabetize my chaos?" "Yes," she said from the engine room. It was distressing. "My chaos is personal. It was also inefficient." He stared at the rack, then sighed. "Fine, but if you reorganize my lucky spanner, we're going to have words. I have already assigned it a place of honor." That stopped him. "You did what?" "It has a higher usage rate than probability would suggest," she said. "This indicates emotional significance." Alex opened his mouth, then closed it again. Somehow the idea that she'd noticed that, a tool he never consciously reached for, one he'd carried through half a dozen close calls, unsettled him more than any talk of bonding ever had. That evening they drifted through a luminous dust field, particles lighting up against the hull like soft fireworks. Alex dimmed the cockpit lights without thinking. Mira noticed. "This view is aesthetically significant to you," she said. "Yeah," he replied quietly. "Reminds me that the universe doesn't care what I'm running from." She turned to him fully then, ears angled in a way he'd learned meant focus, not judgment. "What are you running from?" He smirked reflexively. "Commitment, responsibility, matching furniture." She waited. The silence stretched, patient, unforcing. Finally, he shrugged. "People expect things. I'm bad at meeting expectations." "In my culture," Mira said, "expectations are adjusted to reality, not imposed upon it." "That sounds suspiciously healthy." "Yes." He glanced at her, really seeing her again. The almost human familiarity, the long ears that marked a different way of listening, of understanding. "You know," he said, "most beings I've worked with would have panicked by now, or demanded something." "I do not require demands," she replied. "I require honesty." He snorted. "Careful. That's a dangerous thing to ask from me. Yet you are improving." That earned a genuine smile. He leaned back, hands behind his head, watching the glowing dust swirl. "You're weirdly good for someone who accidentally got engaged to a professional avoidance expert." "I did not find it accidental," she said, "but I am finding it informative." They shared the quiet, the ship humming around them, a small, improbable island of stability in a restless galaxy. Alex realized with a faint jolt of surprise that the tension hadn't vanished, but it had softened, reshaped itself into something less threatening, something curious. For the first time, he wasn't wondering how to escape the future barreling toward him. He was wondering what it might look like if he stopped dodging it. That thought scared him far more than any alien contract ever could. And, inconveniently, it also made him laugh. The notification arrived while Alex was elbow-deep in an access panel, arguing with a stubborn power relay that had decided it no longer respected authority. His wristpad chimed once, politely. He ignored it. It chimed again, less politely. The third chime carried the ominous tone reserved for legal matters and existential mistakes. He sighed, wiping his hands on his jacket. "If this is another guild congratulations message, I'm throwing myself into a wormhole." Mira appeared beside him almost instantly, as if summoned by the universe's sense of timing. "The probability of a wormhole in our current sector is negligible," she said. "That's not reassuring." He tapped the wristpad. A dense block of text unfolded in midair, accompanied by a rotating emblem he now recognized with a sinking feeling. Interstellar Civil Registry. He scanned the first line, then the second, then stopped breathing somewhere around the third. "Why?" he said slowly. "Does this document contain the phrase shared long-term liability across jurisdictions?" Mira leaned closer, reading. Her ears lifted slightly. "Ah, they have accelerated the process." "They've what?" Your declaration has reached Tier 4 recognition, she explained. This occurs when multiple trade entities acknowledge a bond as economically stabilizing. Alex stared at her. So, because we make money well together, the galaxy thinks we should be legally inseparable. Yes, that's insane. It is efficient. He laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Of course it is. The wrist pad chimed again. A new message overlaid the first, then another. Ship modifications pending approval. Dual access financial protocols. Ceremonial acknowledgement kits en route to their next docking point. Alex dragged a hand down his face. My ship is being upgraded for a wedding I didn't agree to. You have not refused it, Mira said gently. I also haven't agreed to it. In many systems, she replied, non-refusal following declaration is interpreted as consent. Alex stared at the bulkhead, considering the structural integrity of punching metal. Remind me never to speak again. Later, when they docked at a small relay station orbiting a blue-white gas giant, the consequences became painfully visible. As Alex stepped onto the concourse, a pair of station officials approached, smiling far too warmly. Captain Alex, one said, and partner Mira, congratulations. Alex opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. It's complicated. Yes, the official agreed cheerfully. All successful unions are. Mira inclined her head in polite acknowledgement. Thank you. They walked on, Alex acutely aware of the looks they drew. Not hostile, not curious, respectful, as if something about him had been upgraded. This is ridiculous, he muttered. People are treating me like I've achieved something. You have, Mira said. You have been chosen. That's not helping. At a supply kiosk, Alex discovered his personal account now linked to a shared one. He stared at the screen, then laughed weakly. I don't even share snacks. You will adapt, Mira said. Statistically, you already are. Back aboard the ship, the final blow arrived. The compatibility scan. Mandatory, non-refusable. The ship's AI announced it with what Alex was certain was enthusiasm. Joint assessment complete, the AI chimed. Result, unsettlingly high, Alex groaned. Even my ship is judging me. Mira studied the results with interest. Our cognitive patterns are complementary. Your improvisational chaos balances my structured certainty. So I'm the mess that makes you functional. Yes, he laughed despite himself. That tracks. The humor faded slowly, replaced by a quieter tension. This wasn't just misunderstanding anymore. Systems were moving. Doors were closing behind him without asking whether he wanted to keep them open. Mira, he said finally, voice lower, I need to know something. She turned to him fully. Ask. If I say no, really say no, what happens? Her ears lowered slightly, not in anger, in gravity. Then the bond dissolves. The declaration is marked as dishonored. And I will experience significant social and personal loss, she said calmly. But I will survive. Alex swallowed. The weight of that settled hard in his chest. He joked his way into a situation where walking away would cost her something real. Something permanent. He forced a crooked smile. You know, where I come from, this is the part where the guy runs. Yes, Mira said. I have studied that pattern. He looked at her, at the quiet certainty, the patience, the absence of manipulation. I don't like hurting people, he said. I know, she replied. That is why this troubles you. Silence filled the cockpit, broken only by the hum of systems now undeniably configured for two. Alex leaned back, staring at the stars. I'm not promising anything, he said at last. I am not requesting promises, Mira said. Only presence. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You really don't do things halfway, do you? No, she said. Half measures create unstable futures. Alex closed his eyes for a moment. The universe had a strange sense of humor, turning a joke into a crossroads, a casual sentence into a test of who he actually was. When he opened his eyes again, the tension was still there. But so was something else. The unsettling realization that for once, staying might be harder than running, and that he wasn't entirely sure which one scared him more. The crisis did not arrive with alarms or hostile ships. It arrived quietly, disguised as a message stamped with ceremonial priority and excessive politeness. Alex found it waiting in the cockpit when he woke, projected softly above the console like a thought he hadn't asked for. Mira was already awake, of course. She always was. She stood near the viewport, long ears angled back as she watched a distant pulsar pulse in steady, ancient rhythm. "What is a convergence delegate?" Alex asked, squinting at the message. Mira turned. "An observer assigned when a bond reaches irreversible probability thresholds." Alex groaned. "Of course there's a threshold. Why wouldn't there be?" The delegate's arrival time blinked beneath the text. 12 hours. "They're coming here?" Alex asked. "Yes." "To my ship?" "Yes." He rubbed his face. "I don't even invite friends onto my ship." "You have very few friends," Mira said gently. "That's not a selling point." The delegate arrived precisely on schedule, transported aboard in a shimmer of folded space that left the air smelling faintly of ozone and regret. It took the form of a tall, robed figure composed of softly shifting light, its face an abstract suggestion rather than a fixed shape. "Designated partners," it intoned, voice harmonizing with itself. "I am here to confirm intent." Alex leaned against the bulkhead. "You guys really need a hobby." The delegate ignored him. "Bonding declarations require conscious affirmation once emotional entanglement is detected." Alex stiffened. "Detected by who?" "By everything," the delegate replied. Mira stepped forward, calm as ever. "I affirm my intent." The words landed cleanly, without hesitation. Alex felt them hit like gravity. The delegate turned its attention to him. "Captain Alex, do you affirm?" The cockpit felt suddenly too small, too quiet. Humor, his usual escape hatch, lined up in his mind. Sarcastic remarks, deflections, anything to keep the moment light. None of them moved. "I need clarification," he said instead. "Granted." "If I affirm," he said slowly, "am I locked into something I can't survive?" The delegate's light shifted. "Define survive." Alex let out a weak laugh. "Yeah, that figures." Mira looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time there was something like uncertainty in her eyes. Not doubt, fear, carefully controlled, but present. "You do not have to do this," she said quietly. Alex stared at her. "You mean that?" "Yes." "Even if it hurts?" "Yes." That was the problem. He'd spent his life avoiding pain by staying unattached, but now avoiding it meant causing it. The universe apparently had decided irony was a fundamental force. He straightened at looking at the delegate. "I don't do vows, or destiny, or forever." "Yet you do choices," the delegate said. Alex snorted. "Barely." He turned to Mira. "You know I joke because I'm scared, right?" "Yes." "And you know I don't always know what I feel until it's already too late?" "Yes." "And you're still standing here?" "Yes." He laughed then, a soft, breathless sound. "You are the worst possible being to accidentally bond with." Mira's ears angled forward. "And yet you have not left." He looked around the ship, his ship, their ship now, at the panels she'd calibrated, the systems that now accounted for 2 heartbeats instead of 1. Somewhere along the way, without noticing, he'd stopped thinking of escape routes. "I can't promise forever," he said finally, "but I can promise honesty, even when it's messy, even when it's inconvenient." The delegate paused, processing. "Honesty is an acceptable foundation." Alex exhaled. "Figures." The delegate shimmered. "Affirmation recorded." Just like that, the moment passed. No explosion, no cosmic fanfare, just a quiet shift, like a course correction made long before impact. When the delegate vanished, the silence felt different. Not heavy, expectant. "Well," Alex said, forcing a grin, "that was terrifyingly mature of me." Mira stepped closer. "You did well." "Don't spread that rumor." She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She laughed. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but genuinely. Alex stared. "Was that humor?" "I am experimenting," she said. He laughed too, tension breaking at last. "Careful, that's how it starts." They stood together in the quiet cockpit, the pulsar still pulsing, the universe still vast and uncaring. But for the first time, Alex didn't feel like he was running through it alone. He didn't know what the future held. He just knew he'd finally stop pretending it was a joke. The ceremony, if it could be called that, happened while the ship drifted between two stars that had never been named. Alex insisted on that much. No stations, no delegates, no crowds of well-meaning officials who smiled like they were watching an investment mature. Just space, quiet and enormous, pressing in from all sides like a reminder of scale. Mira accepted the choice without hesitation. Neutral territory reduces external symbolic pressure, she said. This location is statistically appropriate. Alex snorted as he adjusted the ship's orientation. I picked it because nobody can send gifts here. You are still receiving them, she replied, nodding toward the console. Alex glanced over. 3 unopened data packets blinked patiently, all marked ceremonial. He groaned. I hate how persistent the universe is. You say this often, Mira said, yet you remain within it. Don't tempt me. I've looked into early retirement on a moon with no paperwork. She smiled, an expression she'd been practicing more often lately, less precise now, more intuitive. The long ears that had once seemed so alien to him were relaxed, angled in a way he'd come to recognize as contentment rather than vigilance. They stood in the central chamber, the ship's gravity dialed down just enough that everything felt lighter, without becoming absurd. Alex had vetoed robes, banners, and anything involving chanting. Mira had vetoed the absence of meaning. They'd compromised, as they had learned to do, on something simple and quietly profound. The ship's AI dimmed the lights on its own initiative. I did not authorize that, Alex muttered. Neither did I, Mira said. The AI chimed softly. You did not forbid it, Alex sighed. Traitor. There were no vows in the traditional sense, no declarations about forever or destiny or inevitability. Alex had been very clear about that. Instead, there was acknowledgement of choice, of intent, of the present moment being taken seriously for once. Mira spoke first, her voice steady, caring without amplification. I choose continued alignment, she said, not because it is required, but because it is desired. Alex swallowed. The words hit differently than any contract ever had. He rubbed the back of his neck, then spoke. I choose to stop pretending words don't matter, and to mean the ones I use. Most of the time. He paused and then added, I reserve the right to make terrible jokes. Mira's ears tilted forward. I accept this condition. The ship chimed again. Acknowledged. Alex stared at the ceiling. You're not invited to the next part of this. When it was done, nothing exploded. No cosmic shift tore through space. The stars outside remained distant, indifferent, beautiful. Alex hadn't expected anything else, and yet the quiet felt earned. Later, how much later he wasn't sure. Time had become less sharp lately. They sat together in the cockpit, sharing a meal that didn't glow or attempt escape. Progress. So, Alex said, leaning back, what happens now? Now, Mira replied, we continue. That's it? Yes. He laughed softly. I spent half my life running from that word. And now? Now it sounds manageable. She studied him for a moment, then said, you have changed. Don't make a big deal out of it, he said quickly. I'm still allergic to authority. Yes, she agreed, but you no longer flee connection. He considered that, watching the stars slide past as the ship adjusted course. Together this time, no autopilot assumptions, no unilateral decisions, just shared movement. I guess I learned that joking doesn't make things less real, he said. It just delays the moment you have to deal with them. And you dealt with this one, Mira said. Eventually. They received fewer messages now. The registries updated, the guilds lost interest once the novelty faded, and the galaxy, satisfied that its systems had stabilized, moved on to the next improbable event. The ship remained theirs. The future remained undefined. Alex found he liked it that way. One evening, as they drifted past a familiar nebula, Mira glanced at him. In your culture, what signifies success in a bond? He smiled, easy and unforced. Still choosing each other when the joke wears off. She considered that. Then we are successful so far. Don't jinx it, he said, then laughed. Actually, no. Go ahead. I think I can handle it now. The freighter sailed on, small and stubborn against the vastness, carrying two beings who had learned, by accident, by humor, by choice, that words could bind, but only if you let them. And for the first time in his life, Alex wasn't afraid of what came next. He wasn't running anymore. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like freedom.